Joining us this evening, Sheila Pratt. She writes for the Edmonton Journal. Political blogger Dave Cournoyer and Duane Bratt, professor and chair in the Department of Policy Studies at Mount Royal University. Good evening, folks. There is so much to talk about. I can't keep up with my own words. I should have asked for a full hour. Okay, so Sheila, of the curveball cabinet announcements, which caught you the most by surprise?
Oh, I think Mr. Dirks from Calgary was not even rumored, and he ends up in a very large portfolio in education. Mandel getting health was a bit of a surprise. I think it was pretty well rumored he'd be in the cabinet, but that's a pretty big portfolio, and he has a pretty substantial position on a cabinet committee, so he is a big winner out of the cabinet. And I have to say, I thought Robin Campbell, though he was on the transition team and clearly a right-hand guy, that's a very big leap for him to go into finance, which may say that actually maybe the Premier himself wants to have a fair bit of say over that, but he's had two smaller portfolios, and that's a very big leap for him. Those are my top surprises. Okay,
and Duane, in terms of the Premier having a say, what does Jim Prentice himself taking on three roles say to you?
Pipelines, pipelines, and pipelines. I think it's clear here. If you look at getting Keystone through, that's international affairs. If you're talking about Energy East, that's intergovernmental affairs. You're talking about Northern Gateway, that's Aboriginal affairs. Plus, Prentice held some of these positions in the Harper government as minister, so he's got experience there. He also appointed two assistant or associate ministers in both Aboriginal affairs and Asia Pacific to support him, but it's clear that this is job one, policy one direction for the Prentice government.
Okay, Dave, Rick McIver takes job skills training ministry. Thomas Lukazik left out. Horn also shut out of cabinet. Some familiar faces as well, as have already been pointed out. Was this the shakeup Albertans were expecting?
Well, I mean, in terms of creating a new cabinet, I mean, Jim Prentice is limited by the pool of MLAs that he has, that he has existing in the Tory caucus. He appointed two people from outside of caucus, two people who aren't MLAs, and that comes with its own political risks. I think two is probably a good number to manage. I mean, any more than two, and I think there would have been questions about actual electoral legitimacy. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but I mean, he'll have to call by-elections now. I mean, Mr. Prentice doesn't have a seat in the legislature, neither does Stephen Mandel or Gordon Dirks. So, they're appointed to cabinet, but they also have to receive a mandate from the people.
Okay, I make a promise. We will come back to by-elections in a second. Sheila, you brought up Stephen Mandel, Edmonton's former mayor. Why would he be a choice for health?
Well, I know that is very interesting. In fact, I just have to say, out of these cabinet appointments, I still don't have a really good indication of many of the policy directions of the Prentice government. With health, it's hard to understand. Mandel in 2008 was very upset when Capital Health was taken down, as all the regional health authorities were, and replaced with the super board. And yet Prentice has already said he wants to reappoint a super board. So I know Prentice has also said a few things about sort of softening the centralizing edges. Maybe that's where Mandel is going to help find a way to have a little more regional input into it. But it is a very interesting appointment. I mean, I think Mandel will also be very happy, because when he was as mayor, was very involved with the Regional Health Authority, so he did have a lot of interest in that. But I'm not sure what that means around contracting out or privatization or anything like that. Very hard to say.
Duane, just how much power does Stephen Mandel have in this new government?
A lot of power. I mean, health is the biggest spending envelope. It's a political landmine. I think what Prentice did, went to Stephen Mandel and said, I want you in my cabinet. What do you want? And Mandel obviously said health. So I think he's going to be a very important figure. We'll have to see how it relates, because being the mayor is one thing. Working with a team when you're not the #1 guy is a totally different story. So we'll have to see over the long run how well the Mandel-Prentice relationship lasts.
I do think, though, it was really a significant thing in terms of Prentice's profile in the city wasn't as big as it is in Calgary. It's not that as big in Edmonton, and there is not a natural base for him here. But he did very well giving Mandel that high profile position will certainly help Prentice get the profile he needs up here, because he doesn't automatically have a walk in this city the way he does in Calgary.
And I think with
which is why he appointed Mike Percy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think with Prentice, getting rid of Fred Horn, Doug Horner, Thomas Lukaszuk from cabinet, he needed a strong Edmontonian in his cabinet, and I think we'll see Steve Mandel become kind of a Edmonton lieutenant for the premier.
It's a lot on the shoulders of a guy who's 68 or 69.
Well, and he's not.
That's that generational change.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that, Duane.
And he's not the only one in this category. The one name that seems to be triggering the most tension on Twitter is that of Gordon Dirks. He's in that same age bracket, Sheila. Did anyone see this coming? Gordon Dirks, Education Minister.
Well, I certainly didn't. I don't think anyone did. No one rumored it.
No.
But he's obviously well known in Calgary. He served 4 terms on the Calgary Public Board. So, and did have some time in government as a deputy minister, or assistant deputy minister, I think, before. But I don't know what the connection between him and Prentice is, and why that particular guy be brought in. I think that's very interesting.
Well, Dave, 2 schools of thought on Gordon Dirks, given his background, both in education. I understand a teacher, a principal, administratively. He ran a couple of universities on the religious side, pastor as well. Where does all that
I mean, he's faced some criticism for his association with evangelical, socially conservative evangelical church and, evangelical Christian schools. I've heard people in Calgary say that didn't reflect his time on the Calgary Board of Education. He was the chair of the public school board in Calgary, and that his previous roles in Christian education didn't skew his role as chair. I think it's something to definitely be aware of and something to watch.
Well, I think I'd rather calling on him to clarify his religious views.
I think
is that a fair?
Last in the fall session of the legislature, in the spring session of the legislature, we had a big debate around gay-straight alliances and inclusive schools. I think it would be totally appropriate for the new Minister of Education, who's going to be in charge of the public education system in this province, to clarify his position. So I think it's definitely appropriate for people to call for him to clarify his position. But should we be jumping all over him this early? I mean, the guy hasn't. He's just sworn in yesterday. Give him a chance to explain himself.
Duane, what will be the tale of the tape for Gordon Dirks?
I mean, there's obviously people searching for dirt on Dirks, but I would think everything we've known about Jim Prentice, there was probably some very careful vetting that went on there. But he also has a public track record, and I think we need to pay more attention to a public track record than some obscure blog, for example.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that many years as head of the school board, those were not always easy years. He came in after a very rough time at the Calgary board. It had been disbanded, and obviously he has some talent as an administrator to have brought that board back together and made it survive. So, and also let's remember, Prentice when it came to Bill 44, he didn't promise any changes in that himself. So
Hey, Dave, one more quick comment.
Yeah, I think in terms of the 2 appointments, we have a big appointment from outside of caucus from Edmonton, big one from Calgary. What I was most surprised about is there wasn't an appointment, there was no big appointment from outside the big cities in rural Alberta. In southern Alberta, essentially south of Red Deer, there's no cabinet representation outside of Calgary.
Except Frank Oberle got energy.
Well, he's from Peace River up north.
I know, it's north. But it's rural.
Yeah, but I think they had an opportunity to appoint
those are all.
Go ahead.
Yeah, those are Wild Rose seats. You'd have to get a Wild Rose person to step aside for a by-election. That's not going to happen. Yeah. You're constrained in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. We were going to talk about planes before the break, but I think we'll hold on to that. Up next, the first big policy announcement to come out of the Prentice government, plus not only the cabinet ministers, the premier himself. Sheila mentioned by-elections. They all need seats. Where will they find them, and what happens if they can't win in a by-election? More from our politics panel after the break.